You been implying that Max cooperated?
No, we got that paperwork.
Okay.
We got the initial
I believe
paperwork.
he denied it recently.
Wack 100 just dropped a bombshell that set the internet on fire. In his latest interview, he didn't just say Max B got lucky with his sentence. He swears Max cut a federal deal to shave decades off his time behind bars. Wack claims he's seen sealed documents with his own eyes and even has a video that shows Max B sitting with law enforcement, spilling key details about someone tied to his case. He even says Max gave up the woman's job and home address, painting the Wave God as something very different than the Legend fans thought they knew. But it doesn't stop there. Wack insists the footage is 100% real and says Max's own people, like someone named Pooh Sims, have already seen it. He swears Max's so-called cooperation was so damaging that it completely destroyed any shot at a future appeal. Max has always denied ever snitching, but Wack is doubling down, calling him out directly and teasing an upcoming expose that could blow this whole thing wide open. On the other side, Gina Conway isn't buying it. She says she hasn't seen any real paperwork and believes Wack is spreading unverified claims that could be flat out dangerous. Gina's stance is simple. If it's not in court, it's not real. But let's be real, hip-hop doesn't always wait for the courtroom. In this culture, perception spreads way faster than truth. And when someone like Wack 100 starts tossing out phrases like federal deal and sealed files, people don't just scroll past, they start listening. And just like that, the blogs picked it up and ran wild with it. But before we even dive deeper into Wack 100's explosive claims and Gina's pushback, we gotta rewind the clock, because this saga isn't just about paperwork and legal twists. It's about betrayal, beef, and a Harlem war that flipped the rap game upside down. Long before anyone was whispering about federal deals, prison politics, or viral exposés, Max B and Jim Jones were just two Harlem hustlers trying to make it out of the madness. They came up in the late 80s and early 90s, a Harlem drowning in the crack era, families breaking apart, corners turning deadly, but at the same time, legends like Big L, Cameron, and Dame Dash were carving their names into history. For Max B, life was extra raw. Growing up in the Abraham Lincoln projects, he watched his mom spiral into addiction and even serve prison time. That left him mostly under the care of his grandparents, who ran a tight religious household. But here's the twist. Church turned out to be his unexpected blessing. That's where Max tapped into his gift, singing with the boys' choir of Harlem and sharpening the soulful voice that later set him apart from every street rapper in New York. Meanwhile, Jim Jones was already laying down his blueprint. He went to high school with Cameron, linked up with Freaky Zeke, and helped put together the Diplomats, better known as Dipset. By the time Max B finally touched down in 2005, after serving 8 years for a robbery, Dipset wasn't just hot, it was a full-blown movement running New York. Max wanted in, and at first, it looked like he was on track to be the next face of Dipset. Max B wasn't just another artist, he was lined up to be the next breakout star. He locked in with Jim Jones, laced hooks, dropped tapes, and even co-wrote We Fly High, Jim's biggest hit ever. That unforgettable voice, the smooth swagger, the wavy energy, it was all Max. He was about to take over, but then came the crash. Ego, money, and broken loyalty lit the fuse, and that's when the tension turned into a war. While Max's star was rising, Jim was cashing in millions. And when Max got locked up again, Jim didn't lift a finger to help. Straight cold. That's just how things moved back in the early 2000s, but the real question is, how do two friends turn into sworn enemies? To get that answer, we gotta rewind again. The 2000s were a wild era. Legends were being made and the culture was raw, unpolished, and in your face. At the center of it all stood Dipset, Cameron, Jim Jones, and Freaky Zeke, childhood friends who transformed into rap royalty right before everyone's eyes. They weren't just dropping records, they were building an empire that stretched beyond music. It all really took off when Cameron signed to Rockefeller and unleashed his 2002 classic Come Home With Me. That album went insane, giving Harlem its first real seat at the big boy table in hip-hop. Then came Dipset's debut, Diplomatic Immunity, in 2003, a project stacked with raw bars, Heatmaker's production, and Harlem attitude all over it. Every track was fire. Dipset anthem, I really mean it. Anthem after anthem that shook the streets with pure energy and an aggressive, colorful vibe that was 100% Harlem. Cameron held down the lyrical crown, but Jim Jones was the street general, loud, flashy, and fearless. And then there was Freaky Zeke, the wild hype man whose unpredictable energy kept the whole crew buzzing even after he served a bid in 2004. When Zeke came back home, Dipset only got louder, wilder, and stronger, pulling even more talent into their orbit. Juelz Santana, Hell Rell, 40 Cal, all jumped in, turning Dipset into an unstoppable force. They ruled the mixtape game like kings. Their videos dominated the block, and New York streets were painted Dipset pink. Furs, bandanas, jerseys, the whole city moving like it was their army. But behind the diamonds, designer fits, and non-stop anthems, cracks were forming. Egos clashed, money got murky, and suddenly the empire didn't look so solid anymore. And right in the middle of all this chaos came Max B. Fresh out after serving 8 long years, Max hit the streets in 2005 starving for a new start. He wasn't your average street rapper. He had raw pain laced in his voice and a melody in his soul. While others barked on beats, Max sang with swagger, crooning about robberies and women the same way R&B singers pour out heartbreak. It was different, it was wavy, and the streets couldn't get enough of it. Jim Jones spotted the wave immediately. He saw Max as the missing piece: gritty street credibility, unmatched hook writing, and a charisma that was magnetic. Max started dropping hooks and verses all over Jim's second project, Harlem Diary of a Summer, and his voice cut through like a siren in New York traffic. The game flipped the second Max B laid down the legendary hook for We Fly High. That wasn't just a song, it was an anthem, a whole movement that had everybody yelling "ballin'." The track shot Jim Jones into the mainstream spotlight, but behind the scenes, Max was starting to see the ugly truth. He was being used way more than he was being paid. Max wasn't just in the background either. He penned the hook for Cameron's diss track, You Gotta Love It, a bold shot at Jay-Z that shook the industry. That deep, grimy, melodic voice had the whole city buzzing, with people asking, "Yo, who's this new dude?" When Max finally dropped his first mixtape, $1 Million Baby, it was official. The wave was here, and the streets were hooked. But here's where the cracks started to show. Even though Max was writing records, building hooks, and driving buzz, he wasn't reaping the rewards. No big contract, no full Dipset album, no real money. It was like he was ghostwriting his own success story while somebody else cashed the checks. Jim treated him like a soldier in the background instead of the star he really was. Max wasn't having it. He knew he had the talent, the melodies, and the streets on lock, but the respect wasn't lining up with the work he was putting in. The vibe shifted quick. Max started seeing through the smoke and mirrors, realizing the relationships around him were turning cold even as the music kept heating up. Dipset's empire was starting to crack from the inside, and Max B was already plotting his own path, one that would change Harlem forever. Max B was done playing second to anyone, and once his name got tangled in a robbery case straight out of a movie, the fuse was officially lit. What started as Harlem's next great star rising fast suddenly flipped into one of the wildest rap scandals the East Coast had ever seen. The robbery that changed everything kicked off just as Max's wave was reaching its peak. And at the center of it all, Gina Conway, a name that went from being whispered in clubs to stamped all over courtroom files. She had long been floating in Max's circle, tied to the streets and locked in an on and off toxic thing with him. Gina was a stripper with a reckless streak, while Max was a rising star surrounded by chaos and women. They'd break up, spin back, and crash again. But when Max finally pushed her away, that's when she connected with Jay Plowden. Now Jay wasn't some rapper chasing clout. He was a big money flexer rolling up in white Benzes and tossing cash like it grew on trees. Gina saw the bag and slid right in. But then the story turned dark. One night, she pulled up at the Holiday Inn where Jay and his homie David Taylor were staying. That's when she peeped the stacks of money, the flashy lifestyle, the keys to the Benzes. She clocked it all like a blueprint. And then the move that changed lives, she swiped Jay's key card. In that moment, the setup was born, and the spiral that would drag Max B's name through the mud was already in motion. After leaving Jay's hotel room, Gina slid back to Harlem. And that's when the real storm started. According to court docs and even her own words, she told Max B everything. Some say she only wanted to spark jealousy, but what she really did was hand him the ultimate playbook, a hotel room stacked with cash, the exact location, and a key card sitting right in her pocket. Here's where it gets messy. Max allegedly called his stepbrother and right-hand man, Kelvin Kilo Levo. According to Gina, Max told her that if she rode with the plan and helped Kilo pull off the lick, he'd love her forever. With that promise hanging in the air, Gina and Kilo hit the Holiday Inn, ready to make moves. But they had no idea this wasn't going to be a clean job, because inside the room, Jay wasn't chilling alone. He had a woman with him named Giselle, And the crazy part? She was there to rob him too. What happened next felt like a low-budget heist movie gone completely off the rails. Gina and Kilo tied up Jay and Giselle, tearing through the room searching for money, but the stacks weren't adding up. That's when Gina told Jay to call his partner David Taylor and get him to bring the rest of the cash. But the second David walked in, everything flipped. He didn't know it was a setup, didn't know danger was waiting. Kilo pulled out a gun, chaos exploded, fists flying, panic everywhere, and then the worst sound of all, a gunshot. David Taylor was struck in the head and died instantly at the scene. In that moment, this wasn't just a robbery anymore, it was a homicide. And the fallout would change everything for Max B. Gina and Kilo bolted from that Holiday Inn with about $30,000 in cash, but the streets don't stay quiet. And once a body drops, the feds move quick. Gina cracked almost immediately. Within days, cops caught up to her and found Jay Plowden's stolen laptop in her possession. That was all they needed to drag her in, and once she was sitting in that interrogation room, she started spilling fast. She told authorities that Max B was the mastermind who set the whole thing in motion, that Kilo pulled the trigger, and that she was just the middle piece caught up in the play. Prosecutors ate it up. That was enough for them to go straight at Max. He was arrested, slapped with conspiracy and robbery charges, and his bail was set at $2 million, money he couldn't even begin to touch. So while his buzz outside was building, Max suddenly found himself stuck behind bars, accused of plotting a deadly setup wrapped in money, betrayal, and a toxic love triangle that ended in blood. This wasn't rap beef anymore. This was real-life crime, real time, and a case that would chain Max B's name to one of Harlem's darkest scandals for decades. When the dust settled, Max B was sentenced to 75 years in prison for conspiracy to commit armed robbery and felony murder. The industry thought that was the end of his story, but Max wasn't done yet. Behind those walls, a new story started to take shape. In 2016, his legal team flipped the script, arguing that his original lawyer was corrupt from the start. Not only was the man supposed to be defending Max in court, but he was also his manager and entertainment attorney at the same time. That meant every decision in court had dollar signs tied to Max's future career. And here's the craziest twist. Max had actually been offered a plea deal for 10 years, but his lawyer allegedly pushed him to roll the dice and go to trial instead. According to Max B's new legal team, his first lawyer was never really fighting for him. It was all about the money. They argued that if Max took the 10-year plea, the cash flow would end. But if the case dragged out or somehow got flipped, the lawyer could keep cashing in off Max's career. A judge looked over the evidence and agreed that something was shady. The result? Max's original conviction was thrown out. He later pled guilty to aggravated manslaughter, chopping his sentence from 75 years down to 20, with credit for the time he'd already served. That one decision changed the entire trajectory of his life. Suddenly, Max B had a real shot at freedom, and people started buzzing about his long-awaited comeback, expecting him home this year. But just when the wave was rising again, Wack 100 came crashing in to shake it all up. Wack claimed Max's lighter sentence wasn't just about legal mistakes, it was tied to a federal deal that the public was never supposed to find out about. According to Wack, Max sat down with law enforcement, handed over key details about someone tied to the case, their name, their location, even where they worked, and that cooperation played a direct role in getting those decades chopped off his time. Wack even went as far as saying that people close to Max like Pooh Sims had seen actual video evidence of the sit-down. And just as this was exploding online, Gina Conway resurfaced too, popping back up with claims that she was manipulated, set up, and underestimated. She stressed that Max was always sharper than people gave him credit for, even hinting that maybe Max knew she would fold from the start, and that her role in the setup might have been designed to shield others behind the scenes. Gina's words threw gasoline on the fire, reigniting the never-ending debate. Who's really telling the truth in this twisted saga? One thing looks certain though, Max B is on his way home, and it's happening soon. For music fans, that's a win, because Max himself already said he's ready to bring waves of new music, not beef, but the streets are watching with hungry eyes. Will Max and Jim Jones finally squash years of betrayal and bitterness? Or will Wack 100's explosive claims hang over Max like a dark cloud, making peace impossible before it even begins? Right now, everything, his legacy, Harlem's pride, and the fragile politics of trust in hip-hop hangs in the balance. And I gotta ask, what do you think is gonna happen when Max touches down? Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs the inside scoop. See you on the next one.